Good evening, good evening, good evening, everyone. This is Melba Pearson, and it is time for another edition of Mondays with Melba. As you notice, different backdrop, different location. So excited to be collaborating with community newspapers. Shout out to Grant Miller. Thank you so much for this opportunity. And I'm really excited to be diving in for the next few weeks on the topic of elections. So, obviously, we cannot escape the fact that November 3rd is around the corner. Early voting has started today. So, make sure you have a voting plan and get out there and let your voice be heard. But I'm really excited to be engaged with discussion with one of our wonderful City of Miami commissioners, Ken Russell. Ken, welcome to the show.
Hi, Mel. Well, thanks for having me.
Awesome. I'm really looking forward to hearing your insights because I know you are like boots on the ground when it comes to everything voting here in our city as well as our county. So let's get right into it. Tell us a little bit about your role as commissioner and what you do with regards to elections and voting. Like, how do you know what's happening?
Gladly. Is it a safe space to take my mask off? I feel we have the glass here. We've got some distance. We're okay?
It is.
All
It
right.
is. Okay, so for our listening audience and watching audience, this is glass. It's not even plexiglass. This is proper glass, with at least an inch thick. So I think we're good here. So
Thank you. So fortunately, most of the electioneering issues are handled at the county level under our supervisor of election. Christina White is doing an absolutely amazing job. I've been in touch with her over this last month or two so I really understand from my constituents. I get a lot of questions. I went and voted this morning, and it was like clockwork. I was so impressed with what she's done. And if I'm not mistaken, she's the only one out of 67 counties that is an appointed supervisor of elections, non-elected. So at the city level, really we're providing information. We're also, several of our properties are voting locations. And beyond that, today we held a press conference about voting poll location safety. Precinct safety, and we've had a lot of concerns about that. So we want people to feel very comfortable and safe going to the polls.
So, yeah, let's dive in a little bit when it comes to election safety, because, there's been a lot of rhetoric out there about folks standing back and standing by and all this kind of stuff. So, if somebody's at the polls, like what can they expect? And if something goes awry, or if they feel uncomfortable, they feel intimidated, what should they do?
Yeah. Well, my conversations with our police chief and their staff was to really understand what our role was going to be as a city, especially our police force. And I was happy to learn that they do not intend to have any presence at the polling location. You won't see a uniformed police officer. That in itself could be interpreted as a sign of intimidation to some. And so we make sure that we have no presence there, but we are readily available. We're fortunate in Florida for a couple of laws that they don't have in other states. One, there are no private militias here. Private militias are illegal. Two, we don't have open carry. So if you see a gun at the polling location, that's not okay. And what we've advised people to do is just call 911 if you feel anything that feels like voter intimidation. It's a crime. And of course, you have the 150-foot barrier that you're not supposed to bother anybody, whether a candidate or advocate, 150 feet from the entrance to the voting location.
So what about, and this is always an interesting discussion with regards to the First Amendment, free speech, and all of that. So, is there a problem if you wear a T-shirt of the candidate of your preference while you're waiting in line?
No. As a voter, you're allowed to wear what you like. As a poll worker, you are not. And so the electioneering, the campaigns are able to wear things, but they have to stay beyond the 150-foot mark. Once you enter that 150-foot mark, you have to put a shirt over your advertising.
And what kind of training do the poll workers receive? So, we're having this discussion and you're saying, okay, you can wear this, you can't wear that, or you can wear whatever you want. Do the poll workers get that sort of information? Because I know sometimes people encounter, and this is not to besmirch anyone who's a poll worker, let's be very clear, but, sometimes people have different varying levels of knowledge. Mm-hmm. Many of them may have been doing it over the course of several elections. Maybe some it's their first time. So what kind of training do poll workers receive to be able to make sure that things flow smoothly?
Well, I'm not familiar with the exact training regimen, but I can tell you whatever it is, it's working. Today was the very first day of early voting. I was there just before 8 o'clock. And I went to the local precinct, which is the Vizcaya Historic Garage on South Miami Avenue. And everybody was working, and there were dozens of people working there, dozens of volunteers, from the people out in the parking lot to the entrance at the door to the check-in spot, to the ballot, the actual booth area, and then to the feeding area before you leave. And everybody was so well informed on what their role was and helping dispel misconceptions. And they actually gave me some tips because they saw in my record that I was registered to vote by mail, but I was here voting in person. So there's a lot of misconceptions around that. You do not have to bring your ballot with you. You don't have to surrender your ballot at early voting.
Really?
That is a misconception.
That's what I was always told. So yeah, please tell us the tips and tricks because clearly we all need to know.
So a lot of people chose to vote by mail. I mean, it's a tremendous record-setting amount this year who have registered to vote by mail and have requested their vote by mail ballot. But you do not have to do it that way. By choice, you don't have to tell anyone. You can just go to early voting or you can vote on the day. So there's 3 ways: vote by mail, early voting, or vote on the day. And starting today and for the next 2 weeks, you can go to any one of the early voting locations and you could bring that vote by mail ballot that you've received at home, filled it out, put it in the envelope, put it in the secrecy envelope, put it in the regular envelope, signed it, hope you got everything right, and you can bring it to an early voting location and put it in a drop box. We have drive-through drop box. By we, I mean the Supervisor of Elections Department has drop boxes at every one of these early voting locations. But remember, when you do that, it's still counted as a mail-in vote, right? And if we're expecting challenges and Supreme Court cases around this election, it's going to be on vote by mail. I've been advocating for vote by mail for months and months and months now, and in these last few weeks, between the mail service concerns and just the potential of legal challenges, we've been encouraging people, if the lines aren't too long, you know what, mask up, soap up, and get your hand sanitizer and go do it in person. And it counts differently. And so than even using the Dropbox. So once you go in, this was my experience this morning. They looked me up when I went to sign in, and they said, "Oh, did you receive your vote by mail ballot?" I said, "Yes, I did." And they said, "Did you destroy it?" And I said, "No, I haven't." They said, "Well, can you make sure that you do? And if you just make sure it doesn't accidentally get mailed, because that'll put you in big trouble."
Absolutely.
Right? That would be an attempt to vote twice. But they are not forcing you to bring it, and they don't even ask you to produce it.
Wow.
There's not even a pressure to do so. So.
Okay. What are some other common misconceptions that people have about the voting process?
Well, that there are going to be ballot drop boxes everywhere on Election Day, and that is not the case.
Oh, where are they going to be?
So in early voting, they are at every one of the polling locations. On voting day, on November 3rd, there will only be 4 locations in the entire county to drop your ballot.
Really?
The actual electioneering office in Doral, the North and South branch libraries for the county, and Government Center. Those are the 4 locations on November 2nd and 3rd that you can actually drop. In person.
So but to clarify, so November 2nd, there's no voting. There's no polling places open.
Correct.
But you can still drop off at any one of those 4 locations.
Those 4 locations, yeah.
Okay, and that's North Dade Regional Library, South Dade Regional Library, Government Center downtown, and the actual Supervisor of Elections office in
Correct.
Doral. Awesome. Okay. So, all right. So there's the misconception that you have to bring your ballot your vote by mail ballot to surrender it at the polling place. We know that's not correct. That on Election Day, there's a plethora, a wide variety of places you could drop off. That's not correct. There's only 4. What are some other misconceptions you've heard?
This one is probably the most important. If you're voting by mail, it doesn't matter when you mail it. It matters when they receive it. And if they don't get it by 7 p.m. on election night, it doesn't matter whose fault it was, the mailman's fault, your dog's fault, it will not count. And that will not survive a legal challenge to say, well, the mail's been overwhelmed, or we've been slow, or the president did this. None of that matters. If your vote by mail is not in, and they're considering those drop boxes to have been the custody of the electioneering department. So as long as you get it to one of those 4 drop boxes by 7 p.m. that night, you're good.
Okay, so 6:59 p.m. you could run up to the Supervisor of Elections office in Doral, drop it off, and your vote still counts.
Yes.
But 7:01,
No
not
way.
so much.
They have a timestamp, and they will all go into a separate pile.
Okay.
The other misconception is about signature matching, and that's one people really get freaked out about.
Yeah.
And so you have the ability to cure your signature, and there is no way for you just to look up and say, what does my old signature, my registered signature look like?
Yeah.
So it's a bit of a guessing game, right? Fortunately, however, there have been 2 million votes already cast by mail in the state of Florida. And of those 2 million, 12,000 have been rejected. It sounds like a lot, but actually by a percentage, it could have been a lot worse, I would think. And that's could be rejected for incorrect address or signature mismatch or forgot the envelope, multiple issues. And of those 12,000, already about 6,000 have been cured.
So, well, let me pause you there. Can you talk and walk us through that curing process? How do you cure a ballot if there's a problem?
Yes, well, it's your responsibility. You can track your vote through the mail. But what anyone who really is advocating for these to be completed has volunteer forces. The Biden team has over 1,500 volunteers who are calling. They get the reports over which ballots have been rejected, and they will call those voters and say, "Did you know that your ballot's been rejected? And here are the steps. Here's how you can cure it, whether it's a signature issue or otherwise."
And so the volunteers, do they have the information of why your ballot was rejected, or just simply that it was rejected?
Yes.
Okay.
They fall into different categories, and they have those categories, and they help walk you through. And to my understanding, about 6,000 have been cured already.
Wow. Wow. Okay. All right. So then taking us back again, you were talking about the misconception around, ballots being thrown out or, not counted. So signature being one issue, what are some of the other major issues that people should be aware of to make that maybe preemptively you can make sure that you don't end up having an issue?
A couple of common mistakes, and one that almost happened at my house. A husband and wife get two separate mail-in ballots. They put them both in one envelope.
Oh.
Or they put them in the wrong envelopes. Your envelope, your outer envelope, is unique to you. It has a barcode on it and everything, and it has your precinct. And so if you swap them, there's a good chance you'll get rejected. If you put both yours and your wife's in one envelope and put them in, you'll get rejected. There's an inner secrecy envelope, and this one's a little ridiculous to me. It's sort of a manila-colored envelope inside with no specific function other than to keep your information secret, even though your signature is on the outside of the envelope.
Right.
If you want to keep your vote secret, it shouldn't reject your ballot, but I believe it does. If you didn't include the secrecy envelope before putting into the the outer envelope, you have a good chance of getting rejected.
Oof.
A lot of hoops.
Wow, yes.
Almost like they don't want you to vote. It's almost like they're not trying to count your vote.
And what's so crazy to me is that there's so many states that have been doing vote by mail for years, right? So I believe like Oregon, Utah, possibly Colorado, that they have all their elections are just vote by mail. Like that's just standard. And, we're struggling in the rest of the country to grasp that this is a safe way to vote, that it's an effective way to vote, and it's easy. But this is very troubling. Why do you think it is? Why do you think the rest of the country is struggling to embrace what a handful of states have been doing effectively for so many years?
Well, the concept of universal mail-in voting is a pretty significant move. If you want to convert to that as a state, it's a big decision, and it has been proven to work. For those who do it and have done it and have the systems in place and the infrastructure in place, it absolutely works. We're not a universal mail-in ballot state. But we have been doing vote by mail for a very long time. It was absentee ballot voting, but you've never needed an excuse or reason, not like Texas or some other places where you need to prove why you can't go in person. And so a lot of people do it for convenience. A lot of people do it so they can study their ballot at home and all these misleading amendments and such for the Constitution and the county, charter. And so it's a really nice thing to do, even to create your own little cheat sheet that you can study beforehand. But then a lot of people still want to go in and vote in person. So I think it's a great system, and I think we will expand upon it and learn from, even this election. But really, I think the race for hearts and minds is over. Right now, it's all about counting votes and making sure votes are counted. And for those in opposition, we'll try to make sure votes are not counted.
Right. Which is very a sad state of affairs as a democracy, right? Because a democracy survives and grows and thrives on voting and hearing the voice of the people. So to kind of restrict the ways that people can vote is very troubling to me generally. But just pivoting for a second, what are some of the things you're hearing from your constituents around voting, right? Are you hearing certain recurring themes, certain recurring concerns, and what has been your answer to that?
Well, so interestingly, a lot of my friends have sort of filtered their bubble on social media, and they've started to unfriend people who really have strong views that are different from theirs. I hold a nonpartisan position. Even though I'm a Democrat, I hold a nonpartisan position. And so I tend, in my social media, I have everybody on there. I have my constituents on there. And so I hear a lot of both sides, and my social media ends up being the venue for some disagreements because it's not a lot of like-minded folks. But,
Right.
you know, that's kind of what our country is and should be right now. This idea of the polarization is making it very difficult for us to understand each other at all. But that's something that I've been lucky, actually, I think, having family members on the other side of the aisle and being a commissioner in a nonpartisan position, dealing with constituents that I support, that I represent, who are on both sides. I'm hearing a lot of stuff, and I'm hearing a lot of excitement, passion, anxiety, anger. But I think there's going to be huge numbers, because if anything that I hear that's universal on both sides, it's the willingness to vote in this election.
What are some things that are making people anxious, especially with regards to this election? And I'm not saying necessarily, issues per se, like, reproductive freedom or anything. I'm just talking generally when it comes to the process of voting. Or there's certain anxieties that just keep rising to the forefront over and over again.
All of those issues are very emotional and personal issues to people. And so they want to feel that their vote counts, and they want to feel that if there's enough people that believe what they believe, that the truth will prevail, and they will elect someone that will implement the policies they believe in. The anxiety comes when they don't trust that system to deliver that result. If you lose fair and square, there's actually less anxiety about it. And so that's where I think the anxiety part comes in, because these issues are so important to residents, to voters, and to feel that they, on a technicality, a glitch, a legal issue, or even something that's unfair, having purged voters from the records, or discounting votes, and so many of these issues, it's very disheartening, and it does cause anxiety. So I think between that mixed with being in a pandemic, people's stress levels are very, very high right now.
Yeah, that's for sure. That's for sure. So what do you think is? Well, let me back up for a second. I had a few friends vote this morning. And they were in line for over an hour, right? Which is something I have to say that, I generally am one who early votes in person, right? This year, obviously, I've opted to vote by mail because of the pandemic, and, I have elderly family members. I want to keep everybody safe. But, I've been spoiled in a bad way and a good way, because, when you're able to go in 2016 or 2018 and within 2 minutes, literally you're in and out of the polling place, that's a reflection of low turnout, which is not good. But at the same token, you have the ease of being able to vote quickly. Now, I think a lot of people who are used to that are going to be in for a shock and be like, wait a minute, I didn't allot this much time. I have to get to work, wherever the case may be. So are there some tips or ways that people can be able to vote in a way that's the most time efficient?
Yeah.
Or is everybody going to have to just listen, if I'm going to go vote, I'm setting aside 2 hours, I'm packing a lunch and bringing a lawn chair?
No, there absolutely are techniques to minimizing your time in line. I was very lucky this morning. It was slightly drizzling and rainy, so I thought, you know what? There may be people who wouldn't come out today that might otherwise have. And when I got there, I was a little concerned. There was about between 70 and 100 people in line. I was through that line in 30 minutes or less.
Wow.
And that really impressed me, because our ballot is so long this year that I was worried that the time in the booth was going to take a long time. But like I said, that internal process was so efficient. I was so impressed how they were moving folks in and out and making them feel valued and listened to, and all their concerns as they were voting. But there are other tips you can do as well. They say, and this is anecdotal, so I don't know the statistical evidence behind it, but within those 2 weeks of early voting, the big rush is in the first 2 days and the last 2 days. And that week and a half in between, there's usually a lull at the lines. That may not be the case this year. It may be full court press the whole 2 weeks through.
Right.
But that's one way as well. And then also, you don't have to vote at any particular early voting location. You can use any one of the many, many locations around the county, and you can just Google Miami-Dade County early voting sites, and you will find the list. And you just pick whichever one you think might be less busy. How about that?
Right.
And there's merit to that, because there are places people all think to go. Government Center, like it's a go-to, right? In my district, in District 2 of the city of Miami, we also have the Frost Science Museum, which is right on the Metro Mover, so there's free transit to get there, and et cetera. So yeah.
Yeah, because I'm thinking about like North Jade Regional Library. That's going to be, I know that's outside of your district, but knowing the demographic and the location, I know that's going to be
That'll be a busy one.
A busy one, and especially on the weekends, forget about it. But again, we have to do what we have to do to let our voices be heard. Is the website still doing the approximate wait times? Because I feel
haven't
like
seen that. I don't know.
Okay, because in the past they used to do that, which was handy too. Because then you'd look and you're like, oh, well, Government Center has no wait time right now. Let me run over and and vote. And I hope they have it for this year, because that would be helpful. But yeah, any other tips and tricks to be able to vote effectively and safely?
I would say feel comfortable, especially because of the pandemic. A lot of people haven't haven't even been going to restaurants. There's a fear of going to the polls. And I would say, from what I observed today and from my talks with the supervisor of elections, there's really no concern. I didn't have to touch anything I didn't want to touch. There's the one thing, the digital pen, you sign your way in. You have to pick that up. But I brought my own hand sanitizer. I brought my own pen for filling out the bubble. And the only time I made contact with anyone was when they handed me my I voted sticker. The door was held for me on the way in.
Okay.
Obviously, they hand you your ballot. But I felt safe throughout. And I think that's really important for people to know. It was a very calm environment. Everyone was spacing in the line. There was no, antagonistic talk. It was a good experience.
Did they have the little round things you stand here?
Yes, they did.
The little stickers
on
the floor.
Yep.
Awesome, yeah. Because I think some of us are more spatially challenged, and we're like, how far is 6 feet again? So we want to make sure you don't have a situation where someone who's spatially challenged gets too close, and then someone gets upset, and then that starts a whole scenario.
Don't talk politics in line.
Okay.
The urge is going to be there. You're all there. But I bet you there are people in line who don't agree with what you agree with.
Yeah.
And,
stick to the weather. Because
Exactly.
if you get into sports, you get into religion, you get into politics, you might get into a fist fight. So, and we frown upon that sort of thing. Okay, so then, did they have hand sanitizer
Yes,
at the?
they
Okay,
did.
all right. So they came correct with everything.
Yeah, they had masks for all the workers and everything. I felt very safe.
Awesome. And so, to the best of your knowledge, what's happening more on a statewide level around elections? Because I think you've done some work around
Yes,
that.
and so not only am I the city commissioner for a small district, the lowest elected office in the country, a committee person, a council person, basically. I'm also the statewide chairman for the Florida Democratic Party's Municipal Victory Program. And basically that is a group that is working to just help people who want to run for office and do candidate trainings. And, the reason I started this is because when I got into politics 5 years ago, I was a surfboard salesman. I had no civic
Now there's a transition.
Well, I mean,
That's cool though.
I had no civic knowledge. I had no legal knowledge. I didn't know about land use and zoning, and I certainly didn't know about electioneering, campaigning, how to do a walk list, how to raise money. I didn't know any of that. But I had an issue of a contaminated park in front of my home. I got engaged. I was successful in that effort. It really made me fall in love with the process and want to do more. And so I declared and ran for office. But I couldn't find any support. I couldn't find any help. Not from the local party, not from the state party at the time. And I realized once I got into office that I wanted to encourage other people from outside politics to get into politics, because there is sort of this wall, this invisible wall that people feel like, well, unless I'm already connected or already have a name rec or already have money, I can't break into that world. And it's absolutely not true. So I wanted to create an infrastructure to help those folks. And this Municipal Victory Program, MVP, Most Valuable Player, has done over 800 candidates trained this round alone. We're supporting 20 local races around the state. We are advocating for vote by mail. We worked through 13 county commissions that then worked with their supervisors of elections to do mandatory mail out of absentee ballot request forms to every voter. Miami-Dade County did it. Audrey Edmondson sponsored that. We were able to get that done in 12 other counties that did that, which will put a lot of people, during a pandemic voting. So we're also monitoring as well. And we're like, that's why I'm aware of those cure numbers and the volunteer forces that are working on that. So we have a race on our hands, and it's going to be a thing.
Oh yeah. So, why do you think it was that you didn't get a lot of assistance when you were first running? Like, what was like the hurdle for you to kind of break through?
Well, it partly could have been my fault. I didn't know who to call.
Yeah.
I didn't have any cronies yet, so it's when you're first starting, you're very much on your own, and especially if you're from outside politics, you don't even have a circle of friends who are really engaged in that way. But at least at the party level, because these are non-party seats, they tend to stay away and not involved.
Right.
And there is a good thing to that, because you don't want nonpartisan seats in a municipal level to become terribly partisan. Right? Mm-hmm. There's an absolute beauty to the fact that I am in the minority on my dais, yet I'm able to get legislation passed on so many things I care about. And even though that majority may not agree with everything that I care about, we work together and we find ways, because they know they're going to need me on things as well that I may be, not fully on board with. But if we're all looking for the common good of what we're trying to do for the city, we find ways to work together. Mm-hmm. So for that reason, the parties didn't really speak the same language as these municipals and county electeds, and kind of stayed out. Right. But I still believe there's a reason for the party to be involved, just to activate, build a bench, get people involved, do the trainings, make sure that elected office is open to everybody, and then talk about the issues later on. But really, just that access to running for office and voting is so important.
For sure. And of course, that fundraising piece, right? Because that is often the hardest part for, new candidates, and especially if you don't come from wealth, or, don't have a great last name or something like that. You've got to kind of build from scratch, and campaigns aren't cheap. So,
that's true.
That's one thing that, I learned the hard way, clearly. But, I think a lot of times voters just don't realize, so when they get that fundraising call, they're like, click, because they're like, well, what do you need the money for? Well, the ads cost money, having staff costs money, like all of these things to get your message out there to be a viable candidate. So yeah, definitely co-sign everything that you're saying there. All right, so I think we're down to the last 5 minutes. That's 3 minutes. Okay, all right. All right, so rapid fire. Favorite cuisine?
Oh my goodness. Picanha, Brazilian steak.
Ooh.
My wife's Brazilian. I've been learning to perfect the method. I don't know that I'm there yet, but it's definitely my favorite right now.
Okay. Where's the first spot you're going to head to when we can travel again? Like legit travel again?
Oh. I haven't been doing much travel in a long time, but I'm definitely going to get out to the Bahamas as soon as I can. Yeah.
Nice. Okay. And what do you think your New Year's resolution is going to be? We're winding down to the end of the year, so got to start thinking about that, right?
Yeah, I could do better on my time management. I spread myself a little thin and wear a lot of hats, so that would probably be my resolution, is to be a little more focused on my calendar.
I hear you. And you brought 2 lovely guests with you today?
My daughters, yes, they are my entourage. Mommy works, she's a veterinarian, and so I end up bringing the girls with me to a lot of things. They're getting very civically engaged whether they want to or not. Yeah.
I love that, because again, what did you say? It's about building a bench. And so where does we've got to train our young people early about the importance of, being engaged in the political process and running for office, or at the very least voting. But it would be awesome to see the next generation running as well. So I love it.
Yeah.
All right. You get the final word.
Well, that's a great note to end on. My son's 18. This will be his first election he gets to vote in. Mm-hmm. And, people are down about where we are in this world right now. I'm optimistic. I really believe out of chaos comes opportunity. And if anything, this moment shows us how important democracy is and how fragile it is, right? And so it's worth caring about, and it's worth fighting for.
Absolutely. Amen to that. Well, Ken Russell, Commissioner, City of Miami, thank you so much for joining me today on Mondays with Melba. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. We're going to do this again next week. We're going to talk about the amendments, and we're going to keep pushing all the way to the finish line. Remember, keep your hands washed, keep your masks up, stay socially distant, but not emotionally distant. Take good care.